Hello, and welcome to another episode where this DM helps you prepare for something worse than murder hobos and 3 hours spent figuring out what potion they'd like to buy. I'm talking about hungry adventurers. Today's recipe is simple, delicious, cost-effective, and can be prepared in advance. We're talking about ricotta gnocchi, the cousin of the regular and often prepared potato gnocchi. Unlike potatoes, though, ricotta gnocchi can be made in about 20 to 25 minutes, cooks in 3 to 4 minutes, can be frozen until you're ready to eat. Pairs well with all sorts of pasta sauces, and well, will fill the belly of any hearty adventurer. Going through the list of ingredients, you can see there's not a whole lot here. First up, we have 600 grams or about 4.5 cups of flour. Then we're going to need 32 ounces of ricotta, not ricotta. You say ricotta, that's a total wipe. We have 2 eggs. We also have 2 teaspoons of pepper, and finally 8 teaspoons of pecorino cheese. First thing we're going to do is start breaking up our ricotta. If your ricotta has moisture in it, you do want to strain that out first, but the type I buy generally does not. Just a heads up there. We'll add in our pepper pretty quickly, and then we're going to start incorporating our flour, generally about a half a cup to a cup at a time. Really what we're trying to do here is just mix everything together to get a nice consistency where everything is brought together. And it kind of resembles a bread dough. Again, we're not making bread here, so we don't want to overmix. We don't want to have that gluten sort of activate and make it tougher than it needs to be. Ricotta gnocchi is supposed to be super soft and delicious, like little heavenly pillows. So the less amount of mixing you do, probably the better. We'll add our eggs in to help bind everything. And while those eggs are being mixed in, we're going to add our pecorino cheese. One thing you may notice is I did not have any salt in this recipe. Pecorino cheese is a bit more saltier than other cheeses. I don't feel the need to add salt. You might decide differently. I mean, that's part of experimenting and cooking, but for me, no salt. We'll continue to add more of our flour. You might notice as we get to this point when you're about a half a cup of flour left, some of that flour is going to be used for dusting and coating the gnocchi as you start to roll them out and cut them. So you don't have to use all of the flour that you see in the bowl there. And if you notice later on, I might have a shot where there's probably about a half a cup left. At this point, the dough is becoming a little bit firmer. And at this point, I'm going to start getting ready to just get my hands dirty. This is one of those meals where you're going to get a little dirty, you're going to get a little sticky, but hey, that's okay. So putting in, again, close to the majority of the flour, but leaving a little bit for dusting, I am just going to start very lightly, very gently mixing as much of the dough in with the ricotta as possible. Again, we're trying not to knead here, but it is a necessity to mix. So I'm doing this in the bowl just to keep things as neat as possible. And in a moment, I am going to just put it out on the board. Here I'm working with a tool known as a bench scraper. Some people call it a bread scraper. Super useful when you're working with recipes that require you to make some type of dough. And I am very carefully just trying to mix things in, rolling it over here. You will see I start to overlap and fold like you would a bread, but not really getting into it like you would kneading a regular loaf of bread. Slowly overlapping here, slowly folding it. Just being as gentle as possible. And once I start to feel a little bit of bounce, a little bit of pressure, I'm just going to leave this alone for 5-10 minutes. Just let things settle. You really shouldn't be kneading this for more than 2-3 minutes. This is not something that you should be spending a lot of time for. The main purpose, just to reiterate, is to incorporate all of the ingredients, incorporate the dough, incorporate the ricotta, and then after that, let it sit for a couple minutes. Once you've had a moment to go ahead and clean up your station, I have a couple of pans. I've dusted them with flour. This is where my cut up gnocchi is going to sit when I put it in the freezer. And for the purposes of today's video, I am making enough for 5 adventurers, myself included. So I'm going to segment this dough into 5 pieces. You could do 6 pieces. For this particular recipe, it really depends on how big your adventurers are and how hungry they are. But for me, I'm going to cut these out, lay them on the side, and each particular triangle is going to be one portion for one adventurer. I am going to lightly dust and coat my board, and I'm going to start rolling things out. Now, something that you'll see later on, it's a little easier to even cut these individual pieces in half, because you can see I am really going to run out of real estate here as I start to roll this giant piece of gnocchi. I mean, you could serve it as one giant gnocchi. I would not recommend that, but you know, you do you, boo. And we will continue to roll. You want to do about maybe a inch thick, maybe a half an inch thick. Really depends. This is something that if you start to make these, if you start to enjoy them, which I hope you do, you're going to come up with the size you want. I particularly like to have larger gnocchi. I think it's just a better texture. I think the combination of a large gnocchi with some sauce just hits you differently. But some people like smaller gnocchi. That's going to be up to you. We can see here, I am running out of real estate real quick, and I am going to decide to go ahead and just sort of cut that in half, save it on the side, and start to continue to roll. As we're rolling, you see I'm rolling with my fingers out. I'm rolling from the inside outwards. I am trying to make this as evenly as possible. Don't stress if it's not even. People really aren't going to care as soon as they start to eat these. They're delicious. I go ahead and I will wet my fingertips a little bit. If you're not getting the type of touch and the ability to roll it properly, just give your fingertips just a little bit of water on the edges there, and that'll help with some contact. And then once I get to the size that I want, I just start cutting them out. You can see here I'm using about a knuckle worth of gnocchi here, and we just go down the line. And once we're done with that cutting, we will put them on the baking sheet. One thing to look out for as you're cutting, they're probably still going to be a little bit sticky on the inside, so as you bring them up in here and you put them on the baking sheet, go ahead and don't be afraid to be a little liberal with some of that flour. Make sure they are broken apart. These first few I didn't cut all the way through, so some of them stuck together. But just coat them with a little bit of flour. Once you put them into the freezer, some of them might stick together. That's okay. Break them apart beforehand. Nothing to worry about. You're done your first section. It's just rinse and repeat at that point. Make sure you have enough baking sheets, but continue to roll out, continue to cut. All the while making sure you have enough flour so that things don't stick to your counter. Just to give you an idea of how many I did cut, you can see here the 3 trays. This might not look like a lot to you, but these things are pretty big, and they are also extremely filling. As I mentioned, the recipe that we're throwing out here today should feed about 5, maybe 6 people. When it comes time for cooking, allow your water to start boiling. Make sure you add a little bit of salt in there, maybe a teaspoon or 2. And then I put in my gnocchi by plate. You don't want to throw in every single gnocchi that you just made into there. They're going to stick together. So I put them in usually 1-2 servings at a time. They take about 3 to 4 minutes to cook. Again, if they're frozen, they might take a little bit longer. But you will notice that they start to plump up and they start to rise to the surface. That's how you know when they're done. Don't take them out beforehand. Something that will help you, you can see I have sort of a colander. That colander makes life a little easier. If you have something of a strainer that you can just go in, fit into the pot, and take out, go ahead and use that. Make your life a lot easier. At this point, you can see the gnocchi are starting to rise up on their own, and then I am just putting them back per serving, per plate. Make life easy for me, and then I will have those on the side. And once my pasta sauce is ready, I'll go ahead and put the sauce on each of those individual plates. The other option, if you don't want to go as crazy as I'm going over here, a little bit of a control freak mentality, I will admit, you can just put them on a serving plate. One giant serving plate, throw all the gnocchi on there, and allow the sauce to cover it and allow people to fend for themselves, which is, you know, typical for my group. And that's all there is to it. When it comes to side dishes, garlic bread is a fan favorite. Salad would also be perfectly acceptable if you're trying to be somewhat healthy. When it comes to what type of sauce to use for your gnocchi, what you see here is a simple tomato and basil sauce. Don't feel the need to go crazy with your sauces. Make your life easy. Get a jar of something nice and warm it up while your water is boiling. Tomato sauce, pesto, blush sauce, all of them pair well with gnocchi, so feel free to experiment. But remember, the whole point of this channel is to offer you DMs, recipes that would make your group feel loved without killing your wallet or deleting your free time from existence. So if you get a chance to try this one out, let me know in the comments below what you think. Thanks again for watching.